Money is one of the most powerful forces in our lives, yet few things are as misunderstood. We think of it as numbers, logic, and spreadsheets, but money is rarely about knowledge alone. It is about behavior. It is about fear, greed, hope, and emotion. Two people can look at the same financial situation and make completely different decisions, not because one is smarter, but because their life experience has shaped their relationship with money in unique ways. In The Psychology of Money, Morgan Housel explores these hidden truths. Through stories and reflections, he shows us that building wealth is not just about what we know, but how we act. This is a book less about finance, and more about human nature. Chapter 1: No One's Crazy. When it comes to money, people make decisions that often seem foolish from the outside. But those choices usually make sense to them. Someone who lived through the Great Depression may never trust the stock market again. Someone raised during a bull market may see investing as safe and easy. Neither is crazy, they are simply products of their own experiences. The lesson here is humility. We must remember that our view of money is shaped by luck, timing, and memory, not just logic. What feels obvious to you may be unthinkable to someone else. Chapter 2: Luck and Risk. Success and failure in finance are never entirely earned. They are shaped by forces beyond our control. Bill Gates became Bill Gates in part because his high school happened to have one of the only computers in America at the time. His brilliance mattered, but so did luck. At the same time, his equally talented classmate Kent Evans died young in an accident, his potential erased by risk. The truth is that both luck and risk shape every financial story. Recognizing this should make us humble about our successes and forgiving of others' failures. Chapter 3: Never Enough. Perhaps the most dangerous financial trap is the inability to say, "I have enough." The moment we achieve one goal, we shift our sights to the next. We compare ourselves endlessly to others, and in doing so we risk sacrificing peace and stability for an illusion of more. True wealth is not about chasing infinity, it is about defining what is enough for you, and living within it. Without that definition, no amount of money will ever bring contentment. Chapter 4: Confounding Compounding. One of the most powerful forces in finance is compounding. Small gains, repeated over time, create extraordinary results. Warren Buffett is often celebrated as one of the greatest investors in history, but his true secret is time. He began investing as a child and stayed invested for decades. Most of his fortune was made after his mid-60s, not because he suddenly got smarter, but because compounding had finally done its work. The lesson is simple yet profound: wealth is not built overnight. It is built slowly, almost invisibly, until one day it seems unstoppable. The hardest part is patience, staying invested long enough to let time do the heavy lifting. Chapter 5: Getting Rich versus Staying Rich. It is one thing to get wealthy, another to stay wealthy. Many fortunes are lost because people fail to recognize the difference. Getting rich often requires risk-taking, optimism, and bold moves. Staying rich requires the opposite: caution, humility, and the willingness to survive. Survival is the key. You don't need to chase every opportunity or win every bet. You simply need to stay in the game long enough for compounding to work. That means avoiding catastrophic mistakes, keeping a margin of safety, and remembering that long-term success depends less on brilliance and more on endurance. Chapter 6: Freedom. At the heart of money lies one ultimate reward: freedom. True wealth is not about cars, houses, or status. It is about the ability to wake up in the morning and decide how to spend your time. Money, when managed wisely, buys independence. It buys control over your days, your work, and your choices. This is why many people who live modestly can be far richer in happiness than those with far greater incomes. If your time is your own, you are wealthy in the truest sense. Chapter 7: The Seduction of Wealth. Money can be blinding. We see the glamorous lifestyle of the rich and imagine that is the measure of success. But what we often fail to see is the stress, the pressure, the debt, or the endless chase for more that lies behind the curtain. True wealth is what you don't see: the money quietly saved, the debts avoided, the independence built in silence. The seduction of wealth lies in appearances, but the truth of wealth lies in security. The person driving the modest car with no debt may be far richer than the person driving the luxury car financed to the hilt. Chapter 8: Tails Drive Everything. In investing, as in life, a small number of events often account for the majority of outcomes. A handful of big wins can outweigh countless small losses. This is known as the power of tails, rare but extreme events that shape history, markets, and personal fortunes. Most investors spend their lives worrying about being wrong half the time, but what truly matters is capturing the rare moments when things go spectacularly right. The stock market, technological innovation, and even human progress are all driven by a few outliers. The lesson is not to predict these rare events, but to stay invested and survive long enough to benefit when they come. Chapter 9: You and Me. We often forget that everyone is playing a different financial game. A day trader buying and selling stocks is playing a game of quick profit. A long-term investor is playing for decades of compounding. A retiree may be playing simply to preserve wealth. The problem arises when we take advice or make judgments without realizing that the other person is playing a different game than we are. The truth is that money has no single right answer. It depends on your goals, your timeline, and your values. Understanding what game you are playing, and ignoring those who are playing differently, is one of the most important insights in finance. Chapter 10: Save Money. There is a simple, timeless rule that underpins all financial success: save money. It doesn't matter how high your income is, or how clever your investments are, if you spend everything you earn. Savings are the foundation of freedom. They are the buffer against risk, the margin of safety that lets you survive downturns, and the fuel that allows opportunities to be seized. The beauty of saving is that it requires no market prediction, no genius, no timing. It is entirely within your control. And unlike flashy investments, it may not impress others, but it quietly builds the wealth that truly matters. Chapter 11: Reasonable Rational. People like to think of money as a rational science, but in reality, what matters most is being reasonable. Pure rationality would tell you to invest every penny in the most mathematically efficient way, regardless of your feelings. But human beings are not robots. We have fears, emotions, and dreams. Being reasonable means building a financial life you can stick with. It means choosing investments you believe in enough to hold through downturns. It means striking a balance between what makes sense on paper and what lets you sleep at night. A reasonable plan, consistently followed, will always beat a rational plan abandoned halfway through. Chapter 12: The Psychology of Wealth. Wealth is not income. It is not status. It is not flashy displays. Wealth is what you don't see, the money unspent, the assets quietly compounding, the freedom slowly built. True wealth is less about getting rich and more about staying rich. It is the patience to let compounding work, the humility to respect luck and risk, and the wisdom to know when enough is enough. The psychology of money is the psychology of life itself. It teaches us that success comes not from brilliance, but from behavior. It reminds us that the goal of money is not more money, but freedom, independence, and peace of mind. And it shows us that mastering money is less about mastering markets, and more about mastering ourselves. Closing reflections. As you step away from this exploration of the psychology of money, remember that wealth is not a finish line. It is a mindset. It is the ability to live on your terms, to sleep well at night, to enjoy today while preparing for tomorrow. The true power of money is not in what it buys, but in the control it gives you over your own story. If you can embrace patience, humility, and the courage to define enough, you will already be richer than most. For in the end, money is not about beating others. It is about building a life of meaning, security, and freedom, and that is the kind of wealth that endures. Outliers, the story of success. Success is often celebrated as the product of talent, ambition, and relentless determination. We look at the world's most accomplished people, geniuses, athletes, billionaires, and assume they achieved greatness because they were simply better, smarter, or harder working than everyone else. But in Outliers, The Story of Success, Malcolm Gladwell challenges this traditional narrative. He argues that success is never just about individual brilliance. Instead, it is deeply rooted in hidden advantages, cultural legacies, timing, opportunity, and the environments people grow up in. Gladwell's central thesis is clear: success is not an act of isolated genius but the accumulation of circumstances and opportunities, led upon effort and dedication. To understand why some people achieve extraordinary things while others, equally talented, do not, we must look beyond the individual and examine the larger systems that shape them. Let us take a deep dive into the powerful stories and lessons from Outliers. The myth of the self-made man. One of the first myths Gladwell dismantles is the idea of the self-made man. We love stories of entrepreneurs who started from nothing, geniuses who emerged from obscurity, or athletes who defied all odds. Yet, when you look closely at these stories, you find a different reality. Success is rarely built in isolation, it is the product of hidden advantages that often go unnoticed. Gladwell introduces us to the Matthew effect, a term borrowed from the Gospel of Matthew, for unto everyone that shall be given. In the world of success, those who have a small advantage at the beginning often accumulate more and more benefits over time, widening the gap between them and others. A striking example comes from Canadian hockey. The best players often have birthdays in the first few months of the year. Why? Because youth hockey leagues cut off their age brackets on January 1st. A boy born in January is almost a year older, and therefore bigger, stronger, and more developed than a boy born in December of the same calendar year. Coaches mistake this maturity for talent, give the older boys better coaching and more opportunities, and over time, these small differences compound until those January-born kids dominate professional hockey. The lesson is profound: success often begins not with talent alone but with an early head start that multiplies over time. The 10,000-hour rule. Perhaps the most famous idea from Outliers is the 10,000-hour rule. Gladwell argues that mastery in any complex field requires roughly 10,000 hours of deliberate practice. Talent may give you an entry point, but only relentless, focused practice leads to world-class performance. He illustrates this with the story of the Beatles. Long before they became a global phenomenon, the Beatles played night after night in small clubs in Hamburg, Germany. Their grueling schedule forced them to perform for 8 hours at a time, experimenting with different styles, pushing their limits, and refining their craft. By the time they returned to England, they had accumulated thousands of hours of live performance, giving them a level of polish and confidence that set them apart. Similarly, Bill Gates' rise as a technology pioneer wasn't simply because he was a genius. He happened to attend a school in Seattle that had one of the very first computer labs in the country in the late 1960s. Gates spent countless nights coding, gaining a level of experience that most people his age could not even imagine. By the time personal computers were taking off, Gates had already logged well over 10,000 hours of practice, positioning him perfectly to seize the opportunity. The takeaway is clear: extraordinary success requires extraordinary practice, but the chance to accumulate those hours often depends on access to unique opportunities. The importance of timing. Gladwell also highlights the role of timing in success. Being born in the right year, in the right context, can make all the difference. Consider the rise of tech giants like Bill Gates, Steve Jobs, and Eric Schmidt. They were all born in the mid-1950s, making them the perfect age when personal computers began to emerge in the 1970s. Too old, and they might have already settled into established careers. Too young, and they would have missed the first wave of opportunity. Success often requires being in the right place at the right time, and sometimes, simply being born in the right era. Cultural legacy and its hidden influence. Another central idea in Outliers is the power of cultural legacies, deep-rooted traditions, values, and behaviors passed down through generations. These cultural patterns shape how people think, work, and interact with others, often without them realizing it. Gladwell gives the example of plane crashes. For years, airlines struggled with accidents caused not by mechanical failure but by human communication errors in the cockpit. In cultures with strict hierarchies, co-pilots felt reluctant to question their captains, even when they notice mistakes. This cultural deference sometimes had tragic consequences. When airlines recognized this pattern, they changed training to encourage open communication, even across authority lines. The result was a dramatic improvement in aviation safety. Culture also plays a role in work ethic. Gladwell points to the legacy of rice farming in Asia, where cultivating rice required meticulous, year-round labor. This tradition instilled values of persistence, patience, and diligence, which later translated into high achievement in education and work. Redefining success. In the end, Outliers forces us to rethink what success really means. It is not simply the triumph of talent, willpower, or intelligence. Instead, success is built at the intersection of opportunity, timing, cultural legacy, hard work, and community support. Gladwell shows us that by understanding the hidden patterns behind success, we can create fairer systems, whether in education, business, or sports, that give more people the chance to thrive. Closing reflection. The genius of Outliers lies in its humility. It strips away the myth of the solitary hero and instead paints success as a tapestry woven from countless threads: family, culture, opportunity, timing, and effort. We may admire those who achieve greatness, but rather than viewing them as untouchable, Gladwell reminds us that their stories reveal deeper lessons about how society can nurture potential in everyone. When we understand these truths, we stop asking, who is the smartest, the most gifted, the most special, and instead ask, what opportunities, environments, and legacies allowed this success to flourish? That question brings us closer to building a world where success is not a lottery of birth, but a possibility available to many. What does it mean to grow up today when childhood has been fundamentally transformed by screens? In The Anxious Generation, social psychologist Jonathan Haidt confronts this question with urgency and careful analysis. Through compelling data and vivid stories, he argues that the rise of smartphones, social media, and overprotective parenting since around 2010 has rewired how children develop, leading to alarming spikes in anxiety, depression, and self-harm among youth across developed countries. This isn't just a shift in behavior, it's a crisis in mental health and human connection. Chapter 1: The Great Rewiring of Childhood. Haidt begins by charting a startling rise that began in the early 2010s. Rates of depression and anxiety diagnoses among U.S. college students more than doubled between 2010 and 2018. Suicide attempts and self-harm emergency visits surged, especially among teenage girls, while global peers showed parallel trends. Smartphones didn't merely arrive, they rewrote childhood. This shift marks a transformation from a play-based childhood, rich in unstructured exploration and interaction, to a phone-based existence defined by curated scrolls, comparison, and digital distraction. Chapter 2: Play Deprived, Experience Blocked. Haidt draws on evolutionary psychology and observations from nature to underscore that unstructured play isn't a luxury, it's essential. Just as bones strengthen through physical stress, children grow emotionally and socially through risk, failure, and autonomy. But today's children are often boxed into superficial indoor routines or screen time, protected from real play yet unprotected online. They're being denied the chance to build resilience through real-world experience. Haidt calls these technologies experience blockers. Chapter 3: For Foundational Harms. Haidt identifies four major harms introduced by this phone-based world. 1. Social deprivation: fewer face-to-face interactions and shallow digital communication erode empathy and belonging. 2. Sleep deprivation: screen time displaces sleep, impairing emotional regulation and mood. 3. Attention fragmentation: the digital environment conditions short bursts of focus, reducing capacity for reflection. 4. Addiction: social media platforms are engineered to loop attention with likes and notifications. Chapter 4: The Girls, Boys, and Digital Risks. The impact differs by gender. Girls are particularly affected by social comparison, body image issues, and relational stress, driven by social media's curated perfection. Studies link heavy social media usage, 5+ hours per day, to 3 times the risk of depression among girls. Boys often retreat into gaming, isolated online environments, and even pornography, further disconnecting from real socialization and motivation. Chapter 5: Spiritual and Social Erosion. Although Haidt is secular, he laments the loss of spiritual experiences, moments that transcend mundane experience, embodiment, silence, or ritual, and connection. Digital life encourages internal focus and comparison, stunting growth beyond the self. Real-world community becomes rarer, replaced by click-and-scroll networks that ask little of us. Chapter 6: Overprotected and Underprotected. Haidt identifies a paradox. Today's children are both overprotected in real-world contexts, unsafe play is discouraged, and underprotected in the digital realm, exposed to social media risks. This mismatch breeds anxiety rather than resilience. He warns us that safetyism can infantilize kids, depriving them of challenges that build strength. And so, as we close this exploration of the Anxious Generation by Jonathan Haidt, we are left with a pressing truth that our world has changed faster than young minds can adapt, and the consequences are visible in every anxious glance, every restless night, every struggle with meaning and belonging. Haidt has shown us that the crisis is not inevitable, nor is it irreversible. By reclaiming play, rebalancing technology, reweaving community, and guiding our children with wisdom, we have the chance to turn the tide. The anxious generation does not have to be the lost generation, it can become the resilient generation, if we choose to act. If you found value in this deep dive, and if you want to continue exploring the most important books and ideas shaping our time, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss the next journey. Your support helps bring these powerful stories and insights to life. Together, let's keep learning, questioning, and building a better tomorrow. In Thinking, Fast and Slow, Nobel Prize-winning psychologist Daniel Kahneman invites us into the fascinating world of the human mind, where decisions are made, judgments are formed, and biases quietly shape our lives. The book is built around a powerful idea that our thinking operates in 2 distinct modes, which Kahneman calls System 1 and System 2. System 1 is fast, instinctive, and emotional. It is the voice that blurts out answers without effort, that recognizes a friend's face instantly in a crowd, or that reacts with fear when a shadow seems threatening. System 2, on the other hand, is slow, deliberate, and rational. It is the voice of logic, calculation, and careful reasoning. It is what we use when solving a difficult math problem, planning a long-term project, or questioning our first impressions. Kahneman's central message is that while we like to believe we are rational creatures, much of our everyday thinking is guided by System 1, the quick and intuitive side. This fast thinking system can be incredibly useful. It allows us to navigate daily life efficiently, to drive a car while holding a conversation, or to make snap decisions in emergencies. But the very qualities that make System 1 efficient also make it prone to errors. Our intuitions, while powerful, are often biased, and we rarely notice their limitations. Throughout the book, Kahneman shows us how System 1 and System 2 interact, sometimes harmoniously, but often in tension. He demonstrates that System 2, the rational mind, is often lazy. It tends to accept the stories and impressions created by System 1 without fully questioning them. This leads to predictable mistakes in judgment, which Kahneman calls cognitive biases. He walks us through many of these biases. One of the most famous is the availability heuristic. This is the mental shortcut where we judge the likelihood of events based on how easily examples come to mind. For instance, after watching news about airplane crashes, people tend to overestimate the dangers of flying, even though statistically, it remains far safer than driving. Another bias is the anchoring effect. When we are given a number, even an arbitrary one, it influences our judgment. If asked whether Gandhi was more than 114 years old when he died, people who hear this absurd anchor often guess higher than those who start with a more reasonable number. Kahneman also highlights the halo effect, where our overall impression of a person or thing influences our judgment of their specific traits. If someone is attractive or charismatic, we tend to assume they are also intelligent or kind, even without evidence. These examples reveal how the fast, automatic judgments of System 1 can mislead us, while System 2 often fails to step in and correct them. The book also dives into the concept of loss aversion, a cornerstone of behavioral economics. Kahneman explains that humans fear losses more than they value gains. Losing $100 feels more painful than the pleasure of gaining $100 feels rewarding. This asymmetry explains why people avoid risks, why investors panic at market downturns, and why individuals often make choices that protect them from loss even when the potential gains are greater. Kahneman's research with his colleague Amos Tversky reshaped our understanding of economics by challenging the assumption that humans are rational actors. Their prospect theory demonstrated that people value outcomes not in absolute terms, but relative to a reference point. This is why a pay cut feels devastating, even if one's income is still high, and why discounts and bargains hold so much sway over our decisions. Later in the book, Kahneman explores the difference between the experiencing self and the remembering self. The experiencing self lives in the moment, it feels pleasure, pain, and emotions as they happen. The remembering self, however, is the storyteller. It looks back and constructs a narrative, often favoring peak moments and endings over the full picture. This is why a vacation that was mostly enjoyable but ended badly might be remembered as disappointing, while a difficult challenge that ended triumphantly might be remembered fondly. Kahneman warns that when making decisions about the future, we often cater to the remembering self rather than the experiencing self, sometimes sacrificing real happiness for a better story. In the end, thinking fast and slow is not simply a catalogue of cognitive biases, but a profound reflection on human nature. It challenges us to recognize that our confidence is not always a measure of truth, that our intuitions can be flawed, and that rational thought is more fragile than we like to admit. Kahneman does not suggest that we can escape these biases entirely, but that awareness can help us resist their grip. By slowing down, questioning our instincts, and giving System 2 more room to engage, we can make better decisions in our personal lives, in business, and in public policy. The book is both humbling and empowering. It humbles us by revealing how often we are at the mercy of mental shortcuts and hidden errors. But it empowers us with knowledge that can help us pause, reflect, and choose more wisely when it matters most. So, when faced with a decision, big or small, Kahneman's lesson is clear: do not simply trust your gut. Think fast when you must, but whenever possible, think slow, and allow reason to guide intuition. Thank you for listening to this audiobook summary of Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the hidden workings of the mind, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more thoughtful summaries of groundbreaking books. Share it with a friend who loves psychology, decision-making, or self-improvement, and let us know in the comments which book you'd like us to cover next. Until then, keep learning, keep questioning, and keep thinking a little slower. Most of us think motivation comes from rewards and punishments. Work hard, get paid, slack off, face the consequences. But Daniel H. Pink, in Drive, The Surprising Truth About What Motivates Us, shows that this old model no longer explains what truly drives people in today's world. Instead, lasting motivation comes from three deeper forces: autonomy, mastery, and purpose. In this summary, we'll explore why the carrot-and-stick approach fails, and how tapping into human creativity and curiosity leads to greater performance and satisfaction. Chapter 1: The Rise and Fall of Motivation 2.0. Pink describes the history of motivation as if it were software. Early humans were guided by Motivation 1.0, basic survival needs like food and safety. Later came Motivation 2.0, the system of rewards and punishments that fueled the industrial age. This worked well for routine, mechanical jobs. But as work grew more complex and creative, the old model broke down. Rewards could backfire, narrowing focus and reducing creativity. Punishments often killed initiative. Pink argues that today we need a new system, Motivation 3.0, based on our innate desire to learn, create, and contribute. It's this shift that sets the stage for the rest of the book. Chapter 2: The Problem with Carrots and Sticks. Traditional motivation relies on external rewards, bonuses, prizes, praise, or punishments like penalties and threats. Pink explains that these carrots and sticks can work for simple, repetitive tasks, but they often fail in complex situations. Why? Because rewards narrow our focus. They push us to chase the prize instead of exploring creative solutions. Punishments, meanwhile, create fear and reduce risk-taking. In short, carrots and sticks may boost short-term effort, but they usually hurt long-term motivation, performance, and satisfaction. Chapter 3: The Three Elements of Motivation 3.0. Pink introduces the core of his theory. Real motivation comes from within, fueled by three key elements. Autonomy, the urge to direct our own lives. People are more motivated when they have control over their work and choices. Mastery, the drive to get better at something that matters. Progress and growth keep us engaged. Purpose, the desire to be part of something larger than ourselves, to know our work makes a difference. Together, these three forces form Motivation 3.0, a model built for creativity, innovation, and fulfillment. Chapter 4: Autonomy. Pink argues that true motivation requires freedom. People perform better when they control what they do, when they do it, how they do it, and with whom they work. He gives examples like companies that allow 20% time, where employees pursue projects of their own choosing. These often lead to breakthroughs, because autonomy sparks creativity and ownership. Micromanagement, on the other hand, kills motivation. When people lack control, they disengage. Autonomy, even in small doses, makes work feel meaningful and energizing. Chapter 5: Mastery. Mastery is the drive to improve at something important. Pink explains that mastery is not a destination but a journey. It's never fully reached, but the pursuit itself fuels motivation. To achieve mastery, people need three things: tasks that are just challenging enough to stretch their skills, consistent feedback to measure progress, and the freedom to practice deliberately over time. The path is demanding and sometimes frustrating, but it is also deeply satisfying. Mastery transforms effort into growth and keeps people engaged for the long run. Chapter 6: Purpose. Purpose is the deepest motivator of all. Pink shows that people are most engaged when they feel their work serves something larger than themselves. Organizations that emphasize purpose, beyond just profit, see higher loyalty, creativity, and performance. Individuals, too, thrive when they connect daily tasks to personal values or a bigger mission. Without purpose, even well-paid work can feel empty. With it, even difficult challenges become meaningful. Purpose is what turns effort into fulfillment. Chapter 7: The Type 1 Personality. Pink distinguishes between two motivational styles. Type X people are driven mainly by external rewards, money, status, approval. Their satisfaction depends on outcomes. Type 1 people, on the other hand, are driven from within. They seek autonomy, mastery, and purpose. External rewards matter, but they are secondary. What sustains them is growth, creativity, and meaning. Pink argues that everyone has the potential to become more Type 1. And in a world that values innovation and adaptability, Type 1 motivation is far more powerful and sustainable. Chapter 8: The Toolkit. To put Motivation 3.0 into practice, Pink offers a set of tools for individuals, leaders, and organizations. For individuals, he suggests setting autonomy goals, practicing deliberate learning, and aligning work with personal values. For leaders, he recommends giving employees more control, encouraging skill development, and connecting daily tasks to a larger mission. Pink also emphasizes small changes, like shifting focus from "how much will this pay" to "will this help me grow?" These adjustments gradually transform environments into ones where autonomy, mastery, and purpose thrive. Conclusion: the surprising truth about motivation. Daniel Pink closes with a simple but powerful insight: the old carrot-and-stick model no longer works in a world that demands creativity, adaptability, and passion. Real motivation comes from within, from our desire to control our own path, to get better at what matters, and to serve a greater purpose. By nurturing autonomy, mastery, and purpose, we don't just boost performance, we build more fulfilling lives and organizations. Motivation, Pink reminds us, isn't about pushing people harder. It's about creating the conditions that let them thrive. And that brings us to the end of Drive, The Surprising Truth About What Motivates Us by Daniel H. Pink. At its core, this book reminds us that the greatest fuel for human progress isn't money or fear, it's the deeper drive for autonomy, mastery, and purpose. If this summary gave you something to think about, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who could use a spark of motivation in their life. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you in the next one. In a world that rewards specialists, child prodigies, early experts, and narrow masters of one craft, it can feel like those who take longer to find their path are falling behind. But what if the opposite were true? What if the greatest strength in an unpredictable, complex world is not deep focus from the start, but range, broad experience, curiosity, and the ability to connect ideas across disciplines? This is the central question David Epstein explores in his groundbreaking book, Range: Why Generalists Triumph in a Specialized World. In the chapters ahead, we'll uncover why detours, experiments, and even failures are not wasted time, but the foundation for long-term success. So sit back, relax, and let's dive into the power of range. Chapter 1: The Cult of Specialization versus the Power of Range. We often hear that success comes from starting early, focusing hard, and never straying from a chosen path. Tiger Woods is the symbol of this belief. Before he was 3, he was already swinging golf clubs with a mastery that stunned adults, and by the time he became a teenager, he was on his way to global dominance. His story is used everywhere to show the power of early specialization. But Tiger is not the only story. Roger Federer, one of the greatest tennis players in history, grew up very differently. As a boy he played basketball, soccer, badminton, even skateboarding. Tennis was only one hobby among many. He didn't fully commit until much later, long past the age when many athletes are already locked into a single sport. And yet, Federer too reached the very top of his field. David Epstein uses these two lives to raise his central question: do we really need to specialize early to succeed? Or is there another way, one built on exploration, variety, and flexibility? Epstein explains that Tiger thrived in what he calls a kind environment. Golf has clear rules, repeating patterns, and instant feedback. In such worlds, specialization works. But most of life is not like golf. Most of life is wicked, rules are unclear, problems change, feedback can be delayed or misleading. In these environments, it is often the generalist, the one with wide experiences and the ability to connect ideas across domains, who has the advantage. The opening chapter sets the stage. Epstein is not dismissing specialization, but he is challenging its myth of universality. For every Tiger Woods, there is a Roger Federer, and their contrast shows us that success is not one size fits all. In a complex world, having range may be just as powerful as, and often more adaptive than, narrow focus. Chapter 2: The Cult of the Head Start. Modern culture celebrates the head start. Parents rush to enroll toddlers in language programs, coding classes, and elite sports academies. The belief is simple: the earlier you begin, the greater your advantage. Tiger would seem to prove it, and the idea has spread across education, athletics, and business. But Epstein shows that this obsession with starting early can be misleading. Many of the most successful people, scientists, inventors, artists, and athletes, did not specialize from the beginning. Instead, they sampled widely, tried different paths, and often fell behind compared to their specialized peers. Yet in the long run, they caught up and often surpassed them. One striking example comes from sports research. Studies of elite athletes show that while a few, like Tiger, specialized early, the majority actually delayed specialization. They spent years exploring multiple sports, developing broader physical and mental skills, and only later narrowed their focus. This sampling period turned out to be an advantage, not a handicap. The same pattern appears in education and careers. Students who explore a variety of fields before choosing a major often switch paths later, but they also end up more satisfied and successful. In the workplace, those who move across industries or disciplines may take longer to find their place, but they bring fresh perspectives and creative solutions. The cult of the head start thrives because it offers certainty. Parents and institutions feel reassured when progress can be measured early. But Epstein's research suggests that this rush to specialize can close off opportunities for growth, experimentation, and discovery. Sometimes, the slow starter is actually the one best positioned for long-term success. Chapter 3: Kind and Wicked Learning Environments. Epstein draws an important distinction between two types of worlds: kind environments and wicked environments. In kind environments, the rules are clear, patterns repeat, and feedback is immediate. Think of golf or chess. You make a move, and you instantly know if it worked. In these domains, practice translates directly into progress, and specialization can shine. But most of life does not look like chess. It is wicked. Wicked environments are messy, unpredictable, and often misleading. The rules may change without warning, feedback is delayed or distorted, and past experience can point you in the wrong direction. Business, medicine, and science are full of these wicked conditions. In wicked settings, narrow specialists can struggle because their knowledge is too tightly bound to one system. Generalists, on the other hand, often have the advantage. By drawing on broad experiences and making connections across fields, they can adapt when the environment shifts. Epstein illustrates this with the story of firefighters who failed to adapt when fire behavior broke their expectations. Their training had locked them into patterns that worked in kind environments but failed in a wicked one. By contrast, individuals with broader problem-solving approaches often manage to improvise and survive. The lesson is clear: the world we live in is far more wicked than kind. Specialization has its place, but in a changing, complex environment, range, breadth of knowledge and the ability to think flexibly can be the more powerful tool. Chapter 4: When Less of the Same is More. The specialist's instinct is to double down. If something isn't working, do more of it, practice harder, refine further. But Epstein shows that sometimes, doing less of the same and instead seeking variety is what leads to breakthroughs. He draws on studies of problem solving. When people are trained narrowly, they often rely on familiar methods even when they don't fit the situation. Psychologists call this cognitive entrenchment. Specialists become trapped in their expertise, unable to see solutions outside their training. Generalists, with less rigid habits, are more likely to experiment, borrow ideas from other fields, and find creative paths forward. An example comes from medical research. Doctors trained in one specialty may miss diagnoses because they see every case through the same lens. But physicians with broader training, or those who collaborate across specialties, often catch what others overlook. The same pattern appears in business and technology, where breakthroughs often come from people who mix ideas from different domains rather than from the deepest experts in a single one. Epstein's message is that more of the same practice does not always equal better results. In fact, range, exposure to diverse problems, approaches, and ways of thinking can prevent the blind spots that specialists fall into. In complex worlds, doing less repetition and more exploration can be the true path to mastery. Chapter 5: Thinking Outside Experience. Experience is valuable, but it can also be a trap. Epstein explains that people with deep expertise often become overconfident in their judgments. They rely heavily on patterns they have seen before, but in unpredictable environments those patterns may not apply. Specialists can become prisoners of their own experience. One striking example comes from financial forecasters. Experts with years of narrow training often perform no better, and sometimes worse, than generalists who consider a wider range of information. Because the world is complex, relying only on familiar experience can lead to misplaced certainty. By contrast, generalists are more comfortable questioning assumptions, stepping outside their immediate field, and seeking insights from unlikely places. They may lack the laser focus of a specialist, but they make up for it with adaptability and a greater ability to connect dots across domains. Epstein highlights that the most innovative thinkers are often those who venture beyond their area of expertise. They bring fresh perspectives precisely because they are not bound by the limits of a single tradition. In a world full of uncertainty, thinking outside experience isn't just helpful, it can be essential. Chapter 6: Learning, Fast and Slow. Epstein explores two modes of learning: fast, narrow learning, and slow, broad learning. Fast learning happens in kind environments, clear rules, immediate feedback, lots of repetition. Skills are acquired quickly, but they are often rigid and don't transfer well outside that specific context. Slow learning, by contrast, comes from exploration, struggle, and variety. It feels harder, takes longer, and often involves making mistakes. But the knowledge gained is deeper, more flexible, and more likely to stick. This is known as a desirable difficulty. What feels inefficient in the short term builds resilience in the long run. An example comes from education research. Students who practice by repeating the same type of problem appear to learn quickly, but they forget faster. Students who mix different types of problems, even though they feel confused and slower, actually retain the knowledge better and are more capable of applying it in new situations. In short, fast learning looks good on the surface, but slow learning creates lasting adaptability. Generalists, who expose themselves to diverse challenges, naturally benefit from this slow, varied process. It may not produce instant results, but over time, it creates deeper mastery. Chapter 7: Trouble with Too Much Grit. Grit is often praised as the key to success, the ability to push through challenges without giving up. But Epstein warns that too much grit, applied in the wrong way, can actually trap people. If you persist endlessly in a path that doesn't fit, you risk wasting years of effort and missing better opportunities. He gives examples of students and professionals who stuck with careers simply because they had already invested so much time, even when their passion and performance were low. Psychologists call this the sunk cost fallacy, the tendency to keep going just because you've already invested, rather than because it's truly the right path. Generalists, by contrast, often benefit from knowing when to quit. They are more willing to pivot, to try new fields, to walk away from dead ends. Their strength is not blind persistence but flexibility, recognizing when grit is useful and when it is harmful. Epstein's point is not that grit is bad, but that it must be balanced with reflection and openness. Success is not just about never giving up, sometimes it's about knowing when to move on. Chapter 8: Flirting with Your Possible Selves. As we grow, we imagine different versions of who we might become, different possible selves. Some people lock into one identity early, but Epstein argues that exploring multiple possibilities is healthier and often leads to greater long-term success. He shows that many accomplished people went through winding, experimental paths. They tried careers, hobbies, or studies that didn't work out, but each detour added perspective and skills that later proved valuable. Instead of seeing those false starts as wasted time, they became stepping stones toward a more authentic and satisfying direction. Psychologists find that people who allow themselves to explore different identities are often more adaptable and happier. They may change careers or passions later in life, but the range of experiences gives them resilience. Generalists, in particular, thrive by testing these possible selves rather than forcing themselves into one rigid mold too early. The message is that identity should be flexible. By flirting with different futures, trying, failing, and adjusting, we become better at finding the life that fits us best. Chapter 9: The Outsider Advantage. Sometimes the most valuable insights come not from insiders, but from outsiders. Epstein shows that breakthroughs often happen when someone from a different field applies fresh thinking to a problem specialists have been stuck on. Insiders can become too narrow, locked into the traditions of their discipline. Outsiders, drawing on different experiences, see connections others miss. History is full of examples: scientists, inventors, and entrepreneurs who solved problems precisely because they weren't bound by conventional wisdom. The outsider advantage is really the generalist's strength, approaching challenges with breadth, curiosity, and perspectives that specialists overlook. Chapter 10: Lateral Thinking with Withered Technology. Epstein highlights how innovation often comes not from inventing something brand new, but from reimagining old tools in new ways. This is what he calls lateral thinking with withered technology. Generalists excel at this because they borrow ideas across domains. Where specialists see limits, generalists see possibilities. History shows many breakthroughs, like using outdated machinery, overlooked methods, or abandoned ideas, that became revolutionary when applied in a fresh context. The lesson is simple: progress doesn't always mean pushing forward in the same line. Sometimes it means stepping sideways, seeing old things with new eyes. Chapter 11: Deliberate Amateurs. Epstein describes the value of being a deliberate amateur, someone who stays curious, open, and willing to learn outside their comfort zone. Unlike rigid specialists, amateurs explore freely, ask naive questions, and connect ideas across fields. Many innovators kept this amateur spirit even as they became experts. They resisted becoming trapped by convention, instead approaching problems with playfulness and openness. This mindset, common among generalists, often sparks creativity where pure expertise cannot. The message is clear: keeping the heart of an amateur, curious, flexible, and unafraid of being wrong, can be a powerful source of growth and discovery. Chapter 12: Conclusion: Expanding the Range. Epstein closes with a clear message: in a world that is complex, unpredictable, and constantly changing, range is not a weakness but a strength. Specialization still has value in certain narrow fields, but most of life is not a chessboard or a golf course. It is messy and wicked, and success often comes from those who can adapt, connect ideas, and learn across boundaries. Generalists may start slower, may explore more, and may change paths along the way, but that very journey builds the flexibility and perspective that specialists often lack. By embracing variety, by allowing ourselves to test different possible selves, and by keeping the curiosity of amateurs, we position ourselves to thrive in the long run. The conclusion is both empowering and practical: don't fear being broad, don't rush into narrow paths, and don't assume that detours are wasted time. In a world built on uncertainty, range is not only useful, it may be the greatest advantage of all. Thank you for listening to this extended audiobook-style summary of Range: Why Generalists Triumph in a Specialized World. If you enjoyed this journey, remember to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with others who might need a reminder that exploration is just as valuable as expertise. Your support helps bring more deep dives into books, ideas, and stories that expand the way we think. Stay curious, stay open, and never be afraid to embrace your own range. We live in an age of abundance. Every store shelf, every streaming service, every online catalog offers us more choices than ever before. From the toothpaste aisle to career paths, from dating apps to investment options, modern life is overflowing with possibilities. At first glance, this seems like freedom. Choice, after all, is supposed to empower us. But psychologist Barry Schwartz argues the opposite. In his groundbreaking book The Paradox of Choice, Why More is Less, he shows how an excess of options often overwhelms us, makes decisions harder, and leaves us less satisfied with the choices we finally make. In the chapters ahead, we'll explore why too much choice leads to anxiety and regret, how our culture of unlimited options impacts our happiness, and what we can do to reclaim simplicity in a world of endless decisions. So settle in, and let's dive into the paradox of choice. Chapter 1: Let's Go Shopping. Schwartz opens with the supermarket. What should be a simple trip becomes overwhelming: dozens of cereals, endless toothpastes, rows of salad dressings. More choice looks like freedom, but it also creates pressure to pick the right option. Instead of satisfaction, abundance often brings anxiety and second-guessing. This overload isn't limited to groceries, it appears in clothes, gadgets, jobs, even relationships. We think more options will make life better, yet too often they leave us drained and less happy. This everyday scene sets the stage for Schwartz's message: the modern world gives us more choices than ever before, but too much choice can become a burden. Chapter 2: New Choices. Schwartz points out that modern life has exploded with options far beyond what past generations ever imagined. From hundreds of TV channels to countless career paths, we are surrounded by opportunities. This variety promises freedom, but it also raises expectations. If there are endless options, then surely there must be a perfect one. And if we don't find it, we blame ourselves. Instead of enjoying choice, we often feel trapped by it, worrying that another, better path is always just out of reach. Chapter 3: How We Choose. Schwartz explains that people tend to approach decisions in two main ways, as maximizers or satisficers. Maximizers want the absolute best. They compare every option, research endlessly, and rarely feel fully satisfied, because there's always the thought that something better might exist. Satisficers, on the other hand, look for something that meets their needs and stop once they find it. They don't chase perfection, and as a result, they're usually happier and less stressed. The way we choose matters as much as the choices themselves, shaping whether abundance leaves us content or exhausted. Chapter 4: When Only the Best Will Do. Maximizers often believe that settling for good enough is failure. They strive for the very best in every decision, whether it's buying a car, picking a restaurant, or choosing a career. But chasing perfection comes at a cost. The more options there are, the more time maximizers spend comparing, and the less satisfied they feel afterward. Even when they make a good choice, they wonder if another option would have been better. Schwartz shows that this relentless search for the best often leads to regret, anxiety, and less happiness overall. Chapter 5: Choice and Happiness. We often assume that more choice means more happiness. Schwartz argues the opposite: too many options can actually reduce joy. When choices multiply, two things happen. First, decision-making becomes harder and more stressful. Second, the likelihood of regret increases, because we keep imagining the alternatives we didn't take. Instead of feeling grateful for freedom, we feel trapped by possibility. Happiness comes not from endless choice, but from being content with the decisions we make. Chapter 6 is Missed Opportunities. Every choice we make means giving up alternatives. With more options, the sense of loss grows. Schwartz explains that when we focus on what we didn't choose, we feel regret, even if our decision was good. This opportunity cost weakens satisfaction. Buying one pair of shoes means missing out on all the others. Choosing one career path means closing the door on many more. The more possibilities there are, the stronger the feeling that we might have missed something better. Chapter 7: If Only. Schwartz explores the role of counterfactual thinking, imagining how things could have turned out differently. The more options we have, the easier it is to picture better outcomes we didn't get. This creates regret and self-blame. We think, if only I had chosen differently, even when our choice was reasonable. Instead of appreciating what we have, our minds dwell on the possibilities we missed, leaving us less satisfied with the present. Chapter 8: Why Choice Makes Us Miserable. Too much choice overwhelms us in several ways. First, it paralyzes. We delay decisions because picking feels impossible. Second, it raises expectations. If so many options exist, the perfect one must be out there. Third, it fuels regret. No matter what we pick, we imagine better alternatives. Schwartz shows that instead of increasing freedom, excessive choice leaves us anxious, doubtful, and dissatisfied. More is not always better, sometimes it is worse. Chapter 9: The Tyranny of Small Decisions. Schwartz notes that it's not just big life choices that wear us down, small, daily decisions also drain us. From what to eat, to what to wear, to which emails to answer first, every small choice adds mental weight. This constant decision-making leads to decision fatigue, leaving us less capable of handling important choices later. The sheer volume of small decisions can quietly reduce our energy, clarity, and happiness. Chapter 10: Choice and Freedom. Choice is often seen as the foundation of freedom. Schwartz agrees that some choice is essential, but warns that beyond a certain point, freedom turns into burden. When options are few, each decision feels manageable. When options are endless, we feel lost, pressured, and ultimately less free. True freedom, he argues, comes not from unlimited choice, but from the ability to focus on what really matters. Chapter 11: What We Can Do. Schwartz offers practical steps to reduce the burden of choice. Limiting options, lowering expectations, and learning to satisfy rather than maximize can all bring relief. He also suggests practicing gratitude and embracing constraints. By accepting good enough and focusing on what truly matters, we can avoid paralysis and regret. The goal isn't to eliminate choice, but to manage it wisely, so decisions enhance life instead of draining it. Chapter 12, Conclusion: Learning to Live with Less. Schwartz closes by reminding us that modern life will only keep adding choices. The key is not to chase every option, but to simplify. When we limit unnecessary decisions, accept good enough, and focus on what truly matters, we free ourselves from regret and exhaustion. Less choice, paradoxically, often means more happiness. By narrowing our focus, we gain clarity, peace, and satisfaction in the decisions we do make. The paradox of choice teaches us this simple truth: freedom is not about having it all, it's about knowing what is enough. If you enjoyed this audiobook-style summary and want more deep dives into powerful ideas that shape how we live, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who could use a little less choice in their life. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you in the next one. What makes life truly worth living? For decades, psychologist Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi studied this question and discovered a remarkable answer: happiness is not found in money, comfort, or even relaxation, it comes from being deeply engaged in what we do. He called this state flow, the feeling of complete immersion in an activity, where time fades, focus sharpens, and effort becomes effortless. In Flow, the psychology of optimal experience, Csikszentmihalyi reveals how flow works, why it matters, and how we can cultivate it in everyday life. In this summary, we'll explore the key lessons of his work and learn how to live not just a longer life, but a richer one. Chapter 1: The Secret to Happiness. Csikszentmihalyi begins by addressing a central paradox: many people have more wealth and comfort than ever before, yet they are not happier. External rewards often fail to satisfy us for long. Instead, lasting happiness comes from how we experience life, not from what we have, but from what we do. Flow is the key. When our skills meet a meaningful challenge, we lose ourselves in the moment and gain deep satisfaction. Happiness, he argues, is not something that happens to us. It's something we create through attention, effort, and engagement. Chapter 2: The State of Flow. Flow is a psychological state where action and awareness merge. In flow, people are completely absorbed in what they're doing, whether it's playing music, painting, climbing a mountain, or solving a puzzle. Key features of flow include intense focus on the present moment, clear goals and immediate feedback, a balance between challenge and skill, a loss of self-consciousness and a sense that time either speeds up or slows down. Flow is deeply rewarding because it stretches our abilities just enough to keep us growing, without overwhelming us. It transforms ordinary activities into peak experiences. Chapter 3: Conditions for Flow. Csikszentmihalyi explains that flow does not happen by accident. It arises when certain conditions are met, blending structure and challenge with personal engagement. To enter flow, an activity must have clear goals that direct our attention and provide a sense of purpose. It must also give immediate feedback, allowing us to adjust and improve as we go, keeping us fully connected to the task at hand. Most importantly, the challenge must match our skills. If something is too easy, we grow bored; if it is too difficult, we feel anxious and overwhelmed. Flow exists in the delicate balance between the two, where we are stretched just enough to grow without breaking. In this balance, concentration becomes effortless, distractions fade away, and we feel a sense of harmony between what we want to achieve and what we are capable of doing. Chapter 4: Flow and the Body. Flow is not limited to intellectual or creative pursuits; the body itself can be a gateway into this state. Physical activities like sports, dance, martial arts, or even long walks can draw us into flow because they demand full attention and a harmony between movement and awareness. When athletes talk about being in the zone, they are describing flow. Every movement feels precise, effortless, and natural, as though the body and mind are perfectly synchronized. The body becomes a tool of expression and discovery, showing us new limits of endurance, grace, and strength. Even simple actions, gardening, cooking, or swimming, can become immersive when approached with focus and care. Csikszentmihalyi emphasizes that the body is not just a vessel to carry us through life. When used with intention, it becomes a source of joy and meaning, opening the door to experiences that can transform the ordinary into the extraordinary. Chapter 5: Flow and the Mind. While the body can carry us into flow through movement, the mind offers endless possibilities for immersion. Activities like reading, writing, solving problems, or playing music challenge our intellect and imagination, inviting us into a state of deep concentration. When the mind is fully engaged, distractions fall silent, and thoughts align with the task at hand. Csikszentmihalyi shows that mental flow does not require grand achievements. A person can experience it while working on a crossword puzzle, learning a new language, or even engaging in thoughtful conversation. What matters is the balance between challenge and skill, where the mind is stretched just enough to spark curiosity and growth. In flow, the mind becomes sharper and more alive. We feel not only more capable but more connected to the present moment, discovering satisfaction in the very act of thinking, creating, and understanding. Chapter 6: The Loss of Self-Consciousness. One of the most striking aspects of flow is the fading of the self. In ordinary life, we are often preoccupied with how we appear to others, worried about mistakes, or burdened by self-doubt. But in flow, this inner chatter disappears. The task absorbs all attention, leaving no room for self-consciousness. Rather than diminishing us, this loss of self feels liberating. We stop evaluating ourselves and simply exist within the experience. Musicians lose themselves in their music, writers in their words, athletes in their movements. The self returns once the activity ends, but it often comes back stronger, refreshed by the discovery of what we can achieve when freed from constant self-judgment. Csikszentmihalyi notes that this temporary disappearance of the self is not an escape from reality but a deeper engagement with it. By forgetting ourselves, we actually expand our sense of identity, connecting more fully to the task, the moment, and even to life itself. Chapter 7: Time Transformed. Another hallmark of flow is the way it reshapes our sense of time. Hours can pass in what feels like minutes, or moments can stretch into eternity when we are fully absorbed. This altered perception happens because our attention is completely consumed by the activity, leaving little awareness for the passage of time. Artists may work through the night without realizing it, and athletes may describe a single play as unfolding in slow motion. In flow, time bends to the rhythm of the experience, no longer measured by the clock but by the intensity of engagement. Csikszentmihalyi emphasizes that this transformation of time is not just an illusion. It reflects how deeply the mind and body are aligned with the present. Flow gives us a taste of timelessness, reminding us that the richest moments of life are not counted in hours or minutes, but in the depth of our immersion. Chapter 8: The Autotelic Experience. At the heart of flow lies what Csikszentmihalyi calls the autotelic experience. The word autotelic comes from the Greek for self and goal, meaning an activity that is done for its own sake rather than for some external reward. When we are in flow, the activity itself becomes the reward. This is why artists continue to paint even if their work is never shown, why writers fill journals that no one else may read, and why athletes push themselves in training when no audience is watching. The joy comes not from recognition or payment but from the sheer experience of doing. The autotelic experience is powerful because it frees us from the endless chase of external rewards. It reminds us that meaning is not always found in outcomes but in the process itself. In living this way, even ordinary tasks can be transformed into sources of satisfaction, so long as they are approached with focus and presence. Chapter 9: Flow in Work. Although many people see work as a burden, Csikszentmihalyi reveals that it can be one of the richest sources of flow. Unlike passive leisure, work often provides the very conditions that make flow possible: clear goals, structured challenges, and immediate feedback. When these elements align, even demanding jobs can become deeply satisfying. A surgeon in the operating room, a teacher guiding a class, or a craftsman perfecting a detail can all experience work as a state of immersion where skill and challenge meet. In such moments, work ceases to feel like labor and instead becomes an act of creation and mastery. The tragedy is that many workplaces strip away these conditions, reducing tasks to repetitive routines that drain engagement. Yet when designed with care, work can provide not just a livelihood but a steady stream of flow experiences, offering people meaning, growth, and even joy in their daily lives. Chapter 10: Flow in Play and Leisure. Leisure is often thought of as the opposite of work, a time to rest and recover. Yet Csikszentmihalyi points out that many leisure activities fail to bring true satisfaction. Passive entertainment, such as endlessly watching television, rarely creates the deep engagement that defines happiness. Instead, it can leave us feeling empty and restless. Flow in leisure comes when we actively shape our free time. Playing music, engaging in sports, gardening, or pursuing hobbies requires effort and attention, but that effort pays off in immersion and fulfillment. Unlike passive activities, these pursuits offer challenges that spark creativity and concentration, allowing us to return from them not drained but renewed. The lesson is that leisure is not about escaping effort but about directing it toward activities that enrich us. When we approach play with the same focus we bring to meaningful work, it becomes a powerful source of flow, turning free time into one of life's greatest gifts. Chapter 11: Flow and Relationships. Flow is often seen as a solitary state, but Csikszentmihalyi shows that it can flourish in relationships as well. When people are deeply engaged with one another, sharing ideas, playing music together, or even working toward a common goal, they can enter a shared flow where the boundaries between individuals blur. Conversations that flow feel effortless, filled with energy and connection. Time slips away, and both people leave feeling uplifted and understood. Families, friends, and teams can all experience this collective immersion when attention is fully given and goals are aligned. Relationships enriched by flow become stronger and more meaningful because they are not just about exchange or obligation but about shared presence and growth. In these moments, love and companionship transform from mere companionship into co-created experiences that leave lasting joy. Chapter 12: The Making of Meaning. In the final stage of his exploration, Csikszentmihalyi turns to the role of flow in giving life meaning. Happiness, he argues, is not found in possessions or external rewards but in the quality of our experiences. Flow offers a model for how to shape those experiences so that life feels purposeful and fulfilling. When people fill their days with activities that challenge them, engage their skills, and bring immersion, they naturally create a sense of meaning. Life becomes less about avoiding pain or chasing fleeting pleasures and more about building patterns of experiences that bring growth and satisfaction. Meaning is not something we stumble upon, it is something we construct, moment by moment, through the choices we make and the attention we give. By seeking flow, we do not escape life but embrace it more fully, turning ordinary existence into an ongoing work of art. And so, flow, the psychology of optimal experience, leaves us with a simple yet powerful truth: life's deepest happiness is not something we find, but something we create through the way we focus our attention. Flow is the art of living fully, where challenge and skill meet, where time fades, and where meaning is built in the very act of doing. If you enjoyed this journey into the science of happiness and the pursuit of fulfillment, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with others who love exploring big ideas. Your support helps bring more thoughtful summaries and meaningful stories to life. Stay curious, stay engaged, and keep seeking those moments of flow in your own life.